Welcome back to another episode of Mystery Garage. Now, a little bit of a timeline play. We're still hard at work at doing the VR6 swap on the Mark II Jetta Coupe. However, we need to interject with a little bit of time on the drag car because there's a drag event coming up and we still have the outstanding issues with this car, so we need to solve them in today's episode. And I promise you, today comes with a ton of learning because my mind is blown. Let's jump into it. So once again, welcome back to today's episode. Now, I don't know when you guys are going to see this episode. I don't know whether I'm going to slip it between one of the episodes of the VR6 swap and the Jetta Coupe, or I'm just going to wait till the Coupe swap is done to drop this particular episode, just so we're not bouncing back and forth. It does get a little bit confusing for people who watch every single week. Otherwise, you may just indeed see this beforehand. However, it might drop as a bonus episode. Who knows what I'm going to do with it, but at some point in time, this will air, but I do need to get this done, like I said, because we have an upcoming drag event. Now, let's talk about this a little bit for a minute because there's some stuff we need to catch up on, and I need to explain myself like I did in the end of the drag racing episode where we had a kind of a bad day. I talked about how a lot of this is my fault, and it really is, and today it kind of boils down to telling you exactly why that's the case. I talked a little bit about the ECU issues, and I said when I was talking about the problem, it had to either do with the ECU or the MAF, and I can tell you the solution is not only both of those, as well as a little bit of some fueling issues that we'll talk about, and we'll get all that taken care of in today's episode. I am confident that by the end of this episode, all of our problems will be solved, and the very next time we take this to the drag strip, it will be a ripper. Let's jump into it. Okay, I will do my very best to keep these talking points brief because we got a lot of work to do on the car. However, this conversation has a lot to do with what we're seeing today. I originally got this kit secondhand, maybe even third hand. I don't know how many people it got passed through until it got to me. So when I received the kit that I bought, it came in a bin. So there's a bunch of parts, but because these kits are a little bit less used now, because now, even though they're still retailed today, they're about $6,000, $7,000 for the kit, and there's not as many people going back to a Mark III and supercharging an old Mark III with a brand new kit as there used to be. So there's a ton of information on the internet, or was a ton of information on the internet in the late 90s and early 2000s when these VR6 cars were new and a lot of people were supercharging them. What happened is a lot of these supercharger kits became secondhand and the information started to die. So there is actually, and I looked for hours when I first got this kit for installation instructions on how to put this into a Mark III when I first got the kit, and they didn't exist. There was a bunch of dead links. A lot of stuff on Vortex came up, but again, when you clicked on them to finally get to the information, it was dead. Some stuff is locked up in really old platforms of information sharing, and you just can't get access to them. So I was like, well, I laid it all out. It looked pretty basic. A little precursor to the story as well. Before I hooked up this supercharger kit, I was dealing with some issues with fueling of the car. So I actually thought maybe it was an issue of my return fuel, all that sort of stuff. I think I covered it off a little bit on this channel. I can't remember if I did or not. Anyways, I ended up going to full AN lines on the car for fueling. At the time, I had an adjustable ECS fuel pressure regulator, and I'm not harping on ECS, but once I did the AN upgrade, I still didn't fix the fueling issue, and this is on an NA engine. I actually got so frustrated, I just popped off the ECS adjustable fuel pressure reg, threw on a factory one from a rail I had sitting around, and it ran beautifully, and the problem was solved. So I binned that brand new ECS fuel pressure reg and just ran basically a factory one, and it's been running perfect since. So then I threw on the supercharger kit shortly after I fixed the fueling, because then I knew my fueling wasn't going to be an issue when it came time to throw the supercharger kit on. So long story short, why that's important is I actually ended up just using the fuel pressure regulator that came with the supercharger kit because it was the only other fuel pressure regulator I had sitting around at the time, to check to see if the ECS fuel pressure regulator is bad. So hopefully you're following along. I just grabbed the one out of the kit that I had sitting next to the car, essentially threw it on, it solved the problem, away we went. So then I decided to bolt the supercharger kit on, and I bolted everything that came with the kit on as best I could because I didn't have any instructions, but I ended up getting all the way through it and everything was great. There was 3 things I didn't do. I didn't run the ECU that came with the kit because when I put it on and I started it, it ran really terribly. So I'm like, well, this isn't really working. I tried my factory ECU and it ran great. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna leave this ECU aside. I'm not gonna use it. Next thing was the fuel injectors, sorry. It came with fuel injectors and they were used and I was kind of weary about throwing them in, and the reason why is because just prior to that, I had bought a whole brand new set of upgraded Bosch injectors, and I wasn't really certain on the flow rate of these ones that came with the kit. Even on any of the VF Engineering site, it doesn't really say the flow rate, and the VF Engineering serial numbers, I don't know if it's a VF Engineering thing or what, but the serial numbers on the injectors that came with the kit are actually ground off. So I don't even know what injectors these are. These are definitely the ones that came with the kit, but I can't actually look up, and it's not really labeled on any of the kit breakdowns of what actually these injectors are. But everything I've been able to devise from it is I'm pretty sure they're 30-pound injectors. So they are upgraded injectors, but from what I understand, they're just, replacement 30-pound injectors that fit with the kit. These are not 30-pound. I think they're 25-pound or 20-pound injectors. So at the time I was like, well, and I didn't really know that at the time. I know it now, but I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to throw these in because I don't really know what they are at the time. I might as well just throw in my new injectors, but I wasn't really ready for that because I wanted to compare them first. Anyways, I moved along to throwing on the whole system and everything seemed to work just fine. So I didn't run the injectors, I didn't run the ECU, and the only other thing that was in the kit was this little black box, but I couldn't figure it out because there was no instructions and it comes with wires on it, and I'm like, I don't know where these wires go. Actually, to be perfectly honest, this was hooked up to the bottom of it. There's wires dangling off. They're all weird different colors. I didn't know what it essentially did. And I asked the guy who cut it off the car, and he's like, I don't know, I just cut them off. And I included them just so I gave you everything that came with the kit. So I was a little bit mysterious, and everywhere I looked, I could not find any information on this box. I'm like, well, it's so small and so light, it mustn't matter that much. So 3 things I didn't include: this box, the ECU, and the injectors. When I was at the racetrack last week, we were talking with the guys, and after I said they called me a meathead, they didn't say I was a meathead, but we all understood that I was being a bonehead about it because I wasn't running the injectors that were supposed to come with the kit. I didn't run the ECU that was supposed to come with the kit. And generally speaking, VF Engineering has been praised for making a kit that was very well rounded and worked together really well. So I was actually running like half of the stuff, and how did I expect that to work really well? So long story short, I decided when I came home, the very first thing I was going to do when it came to this car was I was going to throw everything on that comes with the kit. I went on to the internet, downloaded as much information as I could get about every single piece that was included. I made sure I had it all. Again, the only things I was missing was this black box, the ECU, and the injectors. So I thought on today's episode, what we're going to do is throw this kit, or the rest of the injector, we're going to clean the injectors, throw the injectors in, I'm going to hook up the ECU, and we're going to figure out this black box thing. So back on the internet I went, very to little to no information. Again, a ton of dead links and that sort of stuff on this kit. And nowhere, even on the VF Engineering site, does it say what this box is or what it hooks up to. It shows pictures in every picture of the kit. This is always included. And I don't know if I said it already, but my kit is a stage 2 kit. So stage 2 is it's a smaller boost wheel, so you get more boost out of the kit. It's got a different diverter valve with a tougher spring in it. This box, upgraded injectors, that sort of stuff comes with the stage 2 kit, and I got all that. So anyway, even on the pictures and the description of the kit, it doesn't tell you what this is called. So I was typing in black box, what is it, how do you wire it, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't find anything after hours and hours of searching, which is why there's a time delay in this episode, is because I put a week and a half of information searching in my spare time to try and sort this whole thing out. Ultimately, I ended up just reaching out to VF Engineering. I thought they might have a problem with me not buying the kit directly from them, buying it third party or secondhand or whatever you want to call it. I didn't think they would really play ball, and huge thank you to VF Engineering. They were amazing. They sent me as much information as they can give me, which is pretty much everything I needed, and I got the full installation instructions. For anybody who's watching this, I now have access to the full installation instructions that I couldn't find anywhere on the internet. There is newer stuff, different cars, that sort of thing out there, but there is nothing on this Mark III VR6 supercharger kit, whether it's the stage 1, stage 2, I believe there was even at some point a stage 3, but none of that stuff is out there anymore. Maybe it was back in the day, but it's not anymore. I now have it all. So if you need anything, please hit me on Instagram at Mk1 Build, and I can send you this information to keep this headache out of your hands. Anyways, long story short, I'm gonna put these injectors in today. I took apart the ECU quickly, which is very easy, and made sure it has the proper kit chip in it, and it does. So ECU is properly matched to the kit. The injectors will be properly matched to the kit. The only outstanding piece is this. So when I was reaching out to VF Engineering, I said, what is this box called, and how do you wire it in, and where does it go? So they sent me a bunch of information. It actually was included with the installation instructions. It obviously talks about it. And ultimately, this thing is a box made by a company called Split Second, and it is essentially called a voltage clamp. And in this voltage clamp information, which is just a general log from the company Split Second that talks about what this is and how it works, it explains to me in almost verbatim of exactly my problem I was having. So let's talk about this. People have been able to make their factory ECUs, which is why I didn't think it was a big problem, have made their factory ECUs be able to work under boost for most circumstances. Meaning if you had you can chip them, but if you had a 2.0 ABA and you turboed it, sometimes your factory ECU just chipped would work just fine, or even just work just fine under low boost scenarios. So I thought that would work with this kit because superchargers aren't really known for huge boost. I think it floats between 8 and 11 pounds on this unit. Anyways, long story short, is right in this. I'm going to read this for a second because as soon as I read this sheet, I'm like, that's the problem I'm having. So it says here that voltage clamp is designed to limit signals. So this is going to be a little bit technical for a second, but moral of the story is when the input voltage reaches an internal set, the clamp level maintains a consistent output voltage as the input voltage exceeds limit voltage. So essentially, this interrupts the MAF signal to the ECU, that when the when the MAF is reading low boost and boost it can understand, or an airflow past the MAF that it can understand, its signal goes to the ECU. Once the boost signal or the limit that's flowing through the MAF becomes too much for the MAF to compute, this box interrupts that signal to the ECU so the ECU doesn't panic, and it just feeds a consistent voltage of the highest flow through to the ECU, so the ECU doesn't see a problem. It doesn't see the supercharger, basically. It doesn't see the high boost, which was my problem, is this interrupter didn't exist. So I was running the signal from the MAF straight to the ECU, and when the signal became too much for the MAF, the ECU would freak out and would shut me down. So my issue was this thing wasn't in the loop to prevent that overflow signal over the MAF to interrupt it going to the ECU and maintain a standard voltage that the ECU can read. So throwing this in should hopefully fix my issue, but just because I'm at it, I'm gonna do the injectors and I'm gonna do that other ECU with the proper chip. We're gonna make this right today. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. This box that comes with the kit is called the voltage clamp, made by Split Second, and it's included with the kit for a reason. It is because if you don't have it, your ECU will panic when it sees boost flowing through your MAF that it can't compute. It basically hits a level that it can't figure out, and it basically shuts me down, which was every time I drove around in the street, my boost levels were relatively low. Even if I pounded on it, it was just for that split second, it would see a high spike in boost. But when I got to the racetrack and I loaded up in the water box, it was maintained periods of high boost. That MAF didn't understand what was flowing through it, and basically set my ECU off. So we're gonna get that all sorted today. Hopefully that makes some sense. So let's jump into the time lapse. Watch me get this kit installed. Let's do it.
Honestly, I don't know know who the fuck to trust. Is he my friend or my foe? I'm off the exit, drove. Yeah, she give me that clean miles roll. I remember back when I was younger, I was happy. Nowadays feel like no one understand me. I'm good at artists, silly on Bob, Bambi. Baby's yellow, text. She wanna eat me like candy. Run up the racks, track me. I'll run up the racks like an athlete. Big facts, you're the dick, 6 flags. Ballin' like Dink, told her I love her. I ain't really mean that, yeah.
Now they just people like funny. Remember way back she was love. These bitches sneaky can't cover. I got 4 hoes that went tough. I remember. Remember I was selling dog food, no kibbles, just to get me some skrilla. Remember I was really on the block like Tetris, just to get me some chip.
Surfing, rock in the parking lot, my weed louder than like the gay bar block. I be on her mind like non-stop, yeah. Had to cut the little thought, no tomahawk. Remember smoking blunts with my friends. Seconds a couple of days, yeah, lost a lock to the fan. That's the shit got me upset. But at 8, then I finally thought, yeah, I'm smoking with side. 4-4, I'm a zombie. This a girl, but she want it. These little boys think I'm cocky.
Pop it straight like Mary Poppins. Yo, bitch, still like an ice. Smoking on killer, I eat a coffee. My bitch drip like Mary Poppins. Yo, bitch, still like an ice. Smoking on killer, I eat a coffee.
It's a couple of days, yeah, lost a lock to the fan. That's the shit got me upset. But at 8, then I finally thought, yeah, I'm smoking with side. 4-4, I'm a zombie. This a girl, but she want it. These little boys think I'm cocky.
Pop it straight like Mary Poppins. Yo, bitch, still like an ice. Smoking on killer, I eat a coffee. My bitch drip like Mary Poppins. Yo, bitch, still like an ice. Smoking on killer, I eat a coffee. Now they just people like friends. Remember way back she was love. These bitches sneaky can't cover. I got 4 hoes that went tough. I remember.
All right, here's an update. That was a huge pain in the hoo-hoo because my radiator, if you can see, I don't know if it shows that well, just how close all of this is. Getting your hands and stuff into the bolts for the intake is next to impossible. So I had to remove the radiator and do a bunch of goofing around just to be able to pull the intake off, but we got it all done. Next job up is to do this little black box bit. So what I got up here is I pulled up from down below my MAF connection, back here. We're gonna have to tap into it. So what happens actually is you take the blue wire, you cut into it, it intercepts the blue wire. So the blue wire then wires into the box, comes out of the box and goes back down to the ECU. And then, so that takes care of 2 wires in the box. So let's show you here. You got 2 wires here. And then what happens is the red and the black, the power for this box actually comes from these wires here, which I pulled the pin on this one just to, I can take it off easy, but the brown's the ground and the black and yellow is a 12 volt positive wire. So I just got to tap into here, up here a little bit, and this thing will be powered up and I will probably store it somewhere where it's going to stay nice and dry. I don't know, maybe on the side here maybe, or I don't know, it looks kind of ugly. I don't know. Up in here it'll get wet, so I don't know. We'll figure out a place to put it. Again, aesthetics isn't everything, but I do want things to remain looking pretty as best I can. So let's go ahead and wire this in and we will be done with this. Then it's just the ECU and hopefully, oh, and because I had to move the radiator, I had to drain all the water, so we're gonna have to put water back in it to go to the track. But then I want to fire this thing up and see how it runs. New injectors, new ECU, proper chip, proper 4-bar fuel reg. Everything's set up, so hopefully this should work out. So let me get this wiring done.
I just want blue notes, I just want euros. Smoking on good though, pizza from Pluto. Price like Seattle, I didn't ring. Paying on my table, there's nothing you bring. Blue notes, I just want euros. Smoking on good though, bitch from Pluto. Price like Saturn, I didn't ring. Can't in my table, there's nothing you bring. I cannot fuck with these.
And that's all done. All right, so you can't see it, and that's kind of the point. Wired it in, and I actually put it inside the cabin of the car, so I came through. You can see it right there, where I came through. It comes up, and then cuts into here. This is just a bunch of, it kind of looks crappy because it's like 2 going this way and then 2 going that way. So 1 up, 1 down, 1 this way, 1 that way. So I'll clean this up at some point, but for now it's good enough. Everything's all protected. I just didn't want it to burn because the exhaust is right there. So making sure that it doesn't get too hot. That's all done. What else? When I was at it, I actually threw on my Fast Bunny Metalworks fuel holders. So that's pretty cool. Got rid of those plastic doohickeys. Underneath I wired underneath the MAF back in, put in my air filter back in, all that sort of stuff. So that is all ready to go. The last thing we need to do is on the inside of the car, which hopefully I can show you. Just give me 1 second. All right, so the last piece of the VF engineering kit that I have not yet put in is the ECU with the chip. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now. So here's the box. You can see I'm gonna mount it up top, but you can see I've wired my ECU right there. So all I gotta do is pop that down. We'll pop this one in and we should be good to go. Now that is done. Here's the old ECU. I triple checked to make sure that the part numbers were all the same, to make sure it was the correct ECU, but we're all good. The car is ready. I'm sweaty. I need to get the car some water and myself some water, fill up these pipes, and we should be ready to bleed the coolant system. Again, just water because it's going to go to the drag strip, and we are going to fire this baby up and hope it runs. All right. Moment of truth, here we go. All right, not sure how all that came across on camera, but everything, it fired up and it stumbled really lightly right after fire up. But other than that, it started to idle smooth. It is running probably the best it has yet, which makes sense because the kit's now complete. Although I haven't put the test to it, so that's not to say it's not gonna have some issues. There was a little bit of oil on top of the engine, but that must have been obviously something that I left there earlier, so I wiped that off. I had a little bit of dripping from the water when I loaded it up to bleed the system and stuff. I got some on the frame rail and things, so it was dripping down, but there's absolutely no leaks underneath the motor, which is good. Sometimes when you play with fuel system stuff, you may not seat an injector properly. It might leak for a little bit. Sometimes twisting it around, moving it around helps seat that injector, but didn't have that as an issue. No fuel leaks. Obviously we had no oil leaks before, no coolant leaks from us fooling around with the radiator to get the intake off. Everything is looking fantastic. I am really starting to get excited now because this means the next track day we can hit it. All right, I know. You guys really want me to take you out for a rip right now, and I can tell you I am going to, except I'm not going to take you guys for a ride this time. And that's because the very next time you'll see this car is at the drag strip when we get to run, hopefully, a really good time. So unless you see this car come back, that means the very next time you'll see it will be on the drag strip. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully this is the last time we deal with this type of issue. Next time, obviously in drag racing, it'll be something else. But thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you don't currently subscribe to this channel, highly recommend that you do. Guys, until next time, thank you very much. Take care.